I am an ambassador, and I am a rising senior this year. So, um, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah.
Christal, if you want to start.
Sure. Yeah, so my name is Christal Badour. I am a clinical psychologist and also a professor at the University of Kentucky. I really focus on, I do research and teaching, and I also am a mental health practitioner, so I train therapists, and my work is really focused on understanding how people recover following experiences of trauma and really stressful events.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm Pooja Sidney. I'm an assistant professor in the psych department at University of Kentucky. And like Dr. Badour, I'm in the psychology department, although she is on our clinical side and I'm more on the experimental side. So just like she said, I do some research, and my research is mostly on how children learn to think and problem solve. And I do a lot of research on how kids learn math. And then we have the sort of teaching component to our jobs as well. So I teach developmental psychology, and I teach courses that are related to my research on things like how children learn.
If you could live anywhere, where would you live?
I would live in Italy.
Italy?
Yeah.
Why would you live in Italy?
When I was in college, I lived in Rome for a semester while I was studying abroad, which I highly, highly recommend for college experience. And I absolutely loved it. So if I could sort of wave a magic wand and be anywhere, I would be there.
That's a good answer, Christal. I don't know what my answer is. I thought about this a lot, actually, and I could not pick where I would like to live. And I think I decided that, like, this is going to sound really sappy, but as long as I'm with my family, I'm happy anywhere. Like I care a little bit less about where I am and a little bit more about the people I'm with, I think. So family, yeah. Then I'm good.
I've always thought about this question, like, depending on, I feel like I want to live at the beach, but then I like the cold. So I'm like kind of happy where you are, because we have like hot summers and we have cold winters. So I feel like I'm happy in Kentucky. What would you describe as your perfect day?
Do you want to go first?
You want me to go first?
Well, yeah, go for it.
My answer is going to be really lame again, I think. No, I think, again, I think my perfect day would probably be a day spent with my family.
Mm-hmm.
I think what would we want to do? What would I do for my perfect day? And I think one thing that I'm really missing that we haven't done in a while is, so I'm originally from North Carolina. We used to go hiking a lot in the Appalachian Mountains, and not like really serious hiking, but like the kind of hiking that kind of gets you to a little waterfall or a nice little overlook. Mm-hmm. And I think my perfect day would be that. And I think in my perfect day, my kids would be really excited and into it. Nice. But I think that would be it.
Nice. Well, mine isn't so different. My perfect day is traveling with my family. We, similar to hiking, so we love to visit national parks. So we last year visited over 20 national parks in the US, and then we also like to travel throughout the world. So my 4-year-old is a very seasoned traveler, and my favorite day is exploring a new country with a totally different culture, and sharing that with my family.
So how would you balance your career, personal life, and passions?
That's a good question. I don't think it's easy. I will say that. I don't know. Some days I feel like I have that balance, and other days I don't feel like I have that balance. And I think what I do to try and balance my sort of professional life and my personal life is to just sort of do the best I can in each area, but remind myself that I can't really do it all. And I know that doesn't sound great. I know we want to think of ourselves as being able to sort of do it all, but I think I have to remember that that I only have 24 hours in the day, and so I'm thinking about it as a sort of time management issue. Like I'm going to do the very best I can while I'm here at work. And then when I go home to my family, I'm going to put in as much as I can with them. And then also make sure I'm carving out time for myself. So making sure that there are distinct periods of time in the day where I'm focused on one thing and then really trying to do my best. That doesn't, again, necessarily mean I'm going to be the best at one or the other on a given day, but just trying during that time that I've set aside.
Yeah, I think my reaction is somewhat similar. The only thing I would really add is, we're sort of being university professors, somewhat unique in that the same kind of way that for you guys, the summers are a time to really focus on life a bit more. I think we get to kind of continue that, which is a really unique thing about our roles. And so for me, I think about my time, not even within a particular day, but also within the year. So sometimes of the year, I don't have great balance. Sometimes I'm working too much. Other times I scale way back on work and really am focusing on my family and my passions. And also it changes over time. I think it has changed over time throughout my career. So like, as I've gotten further on, I have more time to expand and think about passion. So for example, one of the things that's really important to me is more connection with my community. But that's something early on in my career that I didn't really have a lot of time for. It was pretty much just like work and family, and that was really it. But now that I'm a little bit more established, I have some time to step back and think about some of those other passions. So both personal and also community-based. So like, I love music, but I never had time for it. So I'm taking guitar lessons now. And that's like one of those things where it's like, okay, now is a season to think about balancing my life in a different way so that I can have it sort of meet all of my needs.
Yeah. What motivates you to work hard?
Do you want to tackle this one first, Christal?
Sure. I think it depends on the kind of work. But for me, a lot of the motivation comes from when I'm doing something that I'm excited about. I don't need to muster up motivation. It's already there. I think seeking out something in my career, I've sought out a career that will keep me always engaged and wanting to do more. And I think that that's really critical. So that I think long-term, like it wouldn't be sustainable for me to just be motivated by seeking financial gain or other kinds of things like that. And so I think that's really what keeps me motivated to work hard.
Yeah, I think my answer is very similar to Dr. Badour's. I mean, I think that is in part that reflects the job that we do as scientists. That for me, there's always the next puzzle to think about. There's the next research question, the question I'm asking that I want to know the answer to. And it's those questions that keep me motivated, that I really want to know the answer to those. And it's not to say that I don't need to motivate myself on a day-to-day basis. There might be the sort of big motivation of, I want to come into work and I want to do my job because it's exciting. I have this puzzle I need to figure out, but then maybe I don't want to do this small little thing. And so, for that, like what motivates me is like having other people I like to work with. So I don't like to work alone. I think sometimes we have a view of a scientist that works alone and independently, whether that's a scientist like Dr. Badour and I, or whether that's a person in a lab coat in a chemistry lab. We have this view of a scientist working alone, but a lot of our work is collaborative, which means we often work in teams of multiple people. And I know sometimes students don't like group work in school, but I think we love group work in our careers as scientists, because then, like, if I have to go to this meeting, like, well, maybe Dr. Badour is there, and maybe I'm excited to see her and see what she's thinking about something. And that collaborative aspect of the work, I think, also motivates me to sort of keep going.
Yeah. What ways do you implement self-care?
I think for me, it's checking in frequently on, am I balancing the different values in my life? So self-care might look different, obviously, for different people and at different times. And so for me, it's like, wow, well, if I haven't exercised in several days, I probably better do that, even though, some people find exercising to be just so motivating. I hate it, but I know I need to do it. So for me, it's that. And so it's doing the things I need to do, but then also doing the things I love to do. Like I said, like finding time to travel or finding time to take guitar lessons in a really busy day, doing those things that bring me joy and also a sense of like accomplishing something and learning something new.
Yeah, I think for me, it's sometimes reminding myself that like I'm allowed to be my first priority. I pour so much, and many of our faculty here at UK do. We pour so much into our students, and we pour so much into each other, and I pour so much into my family, and then reminding myself that when I am feeling unmotivated, or when I am feeling like, oh, I had like a bad day at work, or I'm not taking good care of myself, to remind myself that like, yeah, I have a lot of things to do, but sometimes I need to come first and I have to make myself the priority. That doesn't mean that it's all about me every day, all day, but that, just sort of paying attention to how I feel and reminding myself that those things are important.
Yeah.
And I would add to that just the idea of like, sometimes realizing like knowing your limits and knowing like when it's time to scale back a little bit. Sometimes like just work because you're motivated for a goal, but other times it's like, oh, I'm feeling a little burnt out here, or I'm feeling a little stressed and I'm not giving my best. So thinking about, I need to step back and take that time to some me time, like Pooja was saying.
Yeah. How would you explain psychology to young girls?
I can take a stab at this one. So psychology is so many things. It's understanding everything about the human experience is what I would say. So the way we think about things, the way we act, our motivations, our desires, our goals, our troubles, the way we learn, right? Like I think so anything you can think of about how humans function is psychology, which I think is why it's so exciting, because it can be so dynamic and diverse.
Absolutely. And to expand on that, I think often when people think about psychology, they might think about like a psychologist, and they might be thinking about the ways in which our thinking or behaving might be like problematic. But, we don't just study that when people have problems, we also study when people are flourishing and like what makes someone sort of have a really good life and behave in ways that benefit themselves and others. So I think there's a whole range of types of behaviors and thinking that we study. And then many of us study humans, but some people also study non-human psychology, and that's under the big umbrella of psychology. So I would say, if it's got a brain, psychology has something to say about it, and how it is thinking and acting, and maybe even feeling. Here in our department, we have people who study birds, some people who study pigeons and quails, also people who study rats, in many places, people who study primates as well. And yeah, I think, I don't know if you asked Helen about the importance part of this question or not, but I can talk about that too.
Yeah. Why is it important to have experts in this field?
Yeah. I mean, I think as hopefully our answers demonstrate, we really think that psychology like permeates everything, that we need to understand ourselves and we need to understand each other in our everyday lives, in our workplaces, in our schools, when we're interacting with each other online, and like help understanding ourselves and understanding other people helps us to improve, our lives and their lives too. So I think it's important. Christal?
Yeah, I think a great example of this is, the experience of people during the pandemic. So psychologists have been deeply involved in understanding how people have coped with, thrived, struggled, attitudes, beliefs about COVID, about getting vaccines or not wanting to get vaccines, polarization between people with different views and attitudes. And so I think that's just like one example of a very current event that affects everyone, that psychologists have a huge role to play and understand people's experiences.
Why is it important to know how people learn about math?
So I'll take this one. So,
Fair, fair.
so as I said at the beginning, I study how kids learn math, how adults think about math. And, you know, I do think it's really important because I think we have to do math in the real world, whether we kind of want to or not. You know, I think I know from my research, and I'm sure many of you know, that a lot of people don't like math very much. And in many ways, it's very common, I think, for people to feel like their K-12 education system has sort of failed them in learning mathematics. So lots of students struggle. Lots of students are demotivated, so they don't want to learn anything about math. And lots of students suffer from what we call mathematics anxiety, which is some anxiety or nervousness that people might feel if they're doing math, or even if they're thinking about numbers. So I think that that's really problematic because, you know, let's say you wanted to, you know, open up a credit card. Well, you're going to have to know something about the numbers that are associated with that. So maybe you want to, maybe your doctor's telling you to take a particular medication and you need to take it some amount. So this many like milligrams at this frequency. And again, you're going to have to interact with that math information. So that's sort of the small scale that we have to interact with numbers every day. And I want everybody to leave at high school feeling like they can do that. The other is that we need more women like you in STEM careers, in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we really lay the foundation for that in elementary and middle school. So, you know, the big picture of my research is, you know, how can we improve math education at the elementary and middle school levels in a way that help people come out of that, not just knowing math, but also feeling good about it and feeling confident about it.
Yeah. I feel like you kind of touched on, so how do learners' attitudes and anxiety about math affect how they solve problems or learn from instructions?
Yes, I said a little bit about this. So we have looked at how people feel about math at a lot of different ages and in a lot of different contexts. So young kids typically feel pretty good about math. You know, Christal brought up the pandemic and how that's affected everybody, and it'll be interesting to see how the pandemic has changed young children's feelings about math, because I suspect that it really has, or that's what we're hearing from teachers. But pre-pandemic, certainly elementary school students typically reported feeling really good about math. But then we see a shift sometime in 5th or 6th grade where some people start to have really negative attitudes, and you start to see people say they hate math, or it makes them anxious or nervous. And the difference between someone who likes math and isn't anxious, or doesn't like math and is anxious, is a sort of difference between approaching math, like this is a challenge that I want to take on, versus avoiding it. And so I think that has real world implications. So for example, I gave that example of, say, being at the doctor's office or being at the bank and needing to make a decision that involves numbers. And do you want to use that information, or do you want to avoid that information? So either you avoid those situations altogether, or you just don't look at the numbers to inform your choice in that situation. So that's those attitudes and negative and anxiety can shape sort of our motivation to engage or not engage.
Yeah. What advice do you have for someone interested in a career in psychology or science in general?
I'm happy to start with
Yeah.
that. So I think that psychology is a great opportunity to explore thinking about the different kinds of fields within that. So like we've talked about, there's so many different pathways that you can do. You can be a clinical psychologist like I am and work with mental health issues. You can study developmental issues. You can consult with businesses. You can study the brain and how it intersects with neuroscience. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can explore that. And I think great ways to do it. Many high schools have psychology courses that you can take and explore if that's something you like. And it's also really popular, common courses in college as well. And so there's like nice opportunities early on to see if that might be something you're interested in. And so I would say just check it out, like explore if that's something that you want to do. And as far as sciences more broadly, I think to kind of follow up on the point about the importance of math, I think that many young women who have tremendous potential to be scientists are scared away by thinking like the math might be too hard or the chemistry might be too hard. A funny story, I was afraid of taking math-oriented, really science-oriented classes when I went to college, but I loved the idea of research. And I didn't actually know when I started college how much of research actually involves math. It's very statistics-oriented, so different kinds of math, of course. And so I actually picked psychology because I thought, oh, I'll be better at this because it's about people, it's not about math. And it turns out there's a lot of math, but I ended up being quite good at it and liked it a lot. And I didn't expect it. So I think there's a piece too about even if you're unsure, if you find that you're curious about things, you want to understand how things work, like give science a try, because there's also so much within science that you might not think about from your high school classes that you're required to take in terms of what all could really be in that space.
I was going to say almost exactly what Christal said. I think the big piece of advice I have is to explore, just like she said, that I think I had just no idea, even in my first year or two of college, I had just no idea, what does it mean to do research in chemistry or physics? I mean, I don't know, I was sort of used to reading in a book and learning some formulas and then reproducing those on the test. And they don't give you any sense of what it's like to be a scientist in a lab. And so I think as much exploration as you can do, I think many people do have opportunities. Lots of people have opportunities for undergraduate students in their lab, some even from institutions that are not their own. So I know, Helen, you said you were thinking about going to EKU. I mean, I do think there are sometimes opportunities for you to like still find opportunities in other people's spaces. If you were interested in that, even if you couldn't find someone at EKU who was doing exactly what you were interested in. And there are sometimes also opportunities for high school students, particularly for those of you who are like in Lexington, some labs do take high school students on to give them experience. And so, me as a high school student, and my dad was like, you need to get into a lab and see what it's like. And so, I did a week, just 1 week at a neuroscience lab at Duke, which was just down the street from where I grew up. And it was really interesting to see. It's not what I wanted to do, and I knew that after 1 week of being in that lab, but I got to kind of see what it was, what science really looked like. I think also one of the things I might say, if you're interested generally in science or psychology, to really think about the issues that you want to solve. For me, I'm really passionate about education. I'm passionate about math and science in particular. But I'm sure, you all have things that you see in the world that aren't right to you, and you want to help solve those problems. And a lot of times scientists are on the ground trying to solve those problems, and different scientists do that with different tools and different pathways to a solution. And so sort of, I think the first thing is, well, what is the problem in society you want to tackle? And then the next thing is, well, how can I explore what different fields have to offer for how they tackle that particular problem? I also wanted to ask Helen if we might ask Christal a little bit about her research. I feel like she didn't get a chance to talk a lot about what she does, and anxiety and depression. And it may be on your list of things to talk about, but I wanted to highlight that.
Yep. So if you want to go ahead and tell us kind of what you do, Christal.
Yeah, so I have, in addition to teaching as a professor, as I mentioned, and doing research, I also, because I'm a clinical psychologist, I'm a licensed mental health professional, which means that I can provide therapy as well. I currently don't in my role, but I have a lot in the past. And then I train therapists in terms of how to provide the best kind of therapy. Primarily, I do work trying to understand how to best treat post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, but also other issues of anxiety and depression. And so I study both why some people following stressful and traumatic events recover naturally on their own, and why some people go on to have more difficulties with that, and why some people need professional help for that. And then also, what is the best approach? Some people benefit more from some approaches than others. And so trying to understand how to better improve those approaches and make them more accessible to people. And then the other thing is that we know that certain groups of people are particularly vulnerable, right? We know that groups of people who experience poverty, people who come from marginalized backgrounds like racial and ethnic minority individuals, people who identify as gender or sexual minorities, a whole host of people with disabilities, a whole host of different people don't get the same kind of access to care as other people do, and face really unique challenges. And so part of what I do is try to understand what are the barriers, what are the things that make it more difficult for people to experience recovery after like stressful and traumatic events.
Yeah. So for our last question, what do you believe will be the biggest challenge for the next generation of women leaders behind you? And what advice do you give them?
Do you want to start, Christal, or do you want me to start?
That's such a big question. You can start. I'm gonna think on it a little bit
more. So I think actually the biggest challenge for women leaders will continue to be a challenge that women have faced, and that probably will always face, which is like figuring out your own path in this sort of like dense sea of other people's expectations. Like, I think that we as women feel a lot of pressure to conform to one thing or the other. And there are a lot of ways that plays out. You know, maybe I feel this pressure to be like the perfect mom, or maybe I feel this pressure to be like a girl boss or whatever. There are a lot of, you know, these ways that women can have success in society. And I think, I don't think we have to do that. I don't think we have to conform to any particular path. And so I think, you know, trying to find your path in the midst of all that social pressure to act some way, or to be some way, or to find your power in some way is hard. I don't know the best way of navigating that. I can tell you, you know, that so maybe my advice is to try a lot of things, which goes along with what we said earlier about exploring if you're interested, to try out different ways of being, try out different types of, you know, relationships with people, and pay attention to sort of how you feel about it, and try your best to sort of shut out the noise of how I should be. I know that that's hard. We all live in a world where other people have expectations of us. I also hope that you all will never feel like never assume that any doors are closed to you, because I think that, you know, we do often face not just external social pressure for being a certain way, but sometimes the doors really feel closed, but you can usually find a way in somewhere, somehow. So I think that was really vague. Good luck to all of you. But I do think that's a big challenge, is trying to figure out, you know, who am I in a way that is independent of what other people want me to be.
I think you said that so beautifully. I'm not sure that I have anything in particular to add to that. I think, you know, in some fields, I think it's different than others. Like, I think in psychology, actually, it's predominated by women now, which is really interesting. There are some fields where that's still, you know, not the case, and women are still fighting to have a presence. But I do think even in fields like psychology that are predominantly women, the people who tend to be in power and make decisions still are mostly men, and that's something that's changing, which is really exciting. And I think the challenges, though, as Pooja was saying, are shifting from just being present as a woman in a space that hasn't always been open and welcoming to women. Is changing, but the challenges are similar in that being true to who you are, and the figuring out what that is, I think, is like a very interesting task that changes over time as you're in different spaces of your life. And, you know, if you decide to navigate life with a partner, or with children or not, and how that looks, and because there are a lot of expectations for us as women about what a woman should do, and I totally agree that it doesn't have to be that way. And so figuring that out for yourself, I think, is going to continue to be everyone's challenge.
Well, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, Helen.
Yes,
Thank you all three of you so much for your great advice and conversation. Pooja and Christal, I was writing notes down as you guys were talking. So give science a try. That's huge for everyone watching today, all of our younger girls. Explore, figure out your own path, shut out the noise. I love that, highlighted that. And you don't have to conform to a certain path. You guys just give so much great advice, and we really, really appreciate your time. And Helen did an amazing job moderating the conversation. We appreciate you. And thank you everyone for watching today. This is recorded, so it will go up on our Facebook page by the end of the week if you want to share it out with your friends who maybe weren't able to attend. So thank you all again, and have a great evening. It's good to see you all.
Yeah, thank you so
Bye.
much.